Hello there, music lovers. Welcome back to the Woodshed. Want to let you guys know that Woodshed guitar experience is set to be stellar come the end of August. We're talking that last weekend in August. You want to know who's going to be there? We got Brent Mason, Greg Koch, Robin Ford, Mark Letary, Andy Timmons. Just announced Larry Basilio is going to be there. Mike Seal, who plays with Sierra Hull and plays with Jerry Douglas, is going to be there. We've got a house band full of killers. We got Travis Toy. We've got Daniel Kimbrough. We've got Jim Riley on the drum kit. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 3 days in lovely Tennessee at Lake Francis, and we're going to spend 3 days talking about guitar, music, hanging out, all you can eat, alcohol and drinks included. We got jet skis, fishing, ropes courses, all that good stuff. It's the summer camp for guitar nerds and music lovers everywhere. Sign up at woodshedguitarexperience.com. Also, we've partnered with AMS, that's American Musical Supply, and they want to give away some killer gear. They're giving away passes to Woodshed. They're giving away an Andy Timmons signature model Ibanez. They're giving away a Brent Mason hot wired pedal. Of course, we got to give away an Andy Wood gearbox, giving away some Greg Koch pickups, giving away the Mark Letary Melody Overdrive, and much more. So please hit that affiliate link right below. I'll also post the link for Woodshed Guitar Experience. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring in my good buddy Andy Timmons, tone guru, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi master of all things that sound great. And we're going to hang out and riff here for a little bit and chit chat and just talk about guitar, how to improve your sound, and all that kind of good stuff. Let's take it over to me and the mighty Mr. Timmons. All right, hello there, music lovers. Andy Wood here, and got one of the finest folks on planet Earth, one of the greatest guitar players with the best tone, Mr. Andy Timmons.
Andrew, it's good to be here with you, man. I am so looking forward to our upcoming hang, and yeah, thanks for having me along again, brother.
Oh man, you know, basically this hang came about because the fine folks at AMS jumped on board with the Woodshed camp.
Killer.
And they're giving away one of your fancy pants Ibanez guitars.
You mean like this one right here? Paul Stanley would say, right here, this guitar. Yeah, I love this thing. I'm a little biased. They're not giving this one away, are they? Because I kind of need it. So
no, that one's yours.
I hope they have another one. Okay, cool.
And they reached out and they were like, "Hey, man, do you think we could, get a stream and a hang?" And I was like, "Of course,
absolutely."
And so I thought, what would be a cool topic to just kind of kick down the hill would be like the journey of tone. Like I really sincerely mean this. Like sound is something that you have just really been able to reach into your ear and your mind. And like what you're getting to come out it feels like it's just like a direct connection. And you've had a sprawling career, right?
Still sprawling. That's a good word for it. Because like, what's going on? It is kind of sprawled all over, isn't it?
I actually had one of my Patreons request a deep dive into an old Danger song. They're a big fan of yours. And the playing, I can still tell it's you, but it's like a different side of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe
and
so.
like, I wanted to just talk about your journey, or let you talk about more important.
Well, sure.
Your journey from like, what was it like to have a sound and to be coming up in the game and looking for stuff that sounded good and felt good to where you are now, to where it's just what you do is on another level,
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's interesting because, I mean, obviously, tone was always at a certain level of importance, but I think in my younger years, it was more about the playing, and the tone just kind of came along with it, if that makes any sense. I mean, I didn't have the resources to be checking out all kinds of different stuff. I got what I got, and I made do with it, But what the real pursuit was, what ended up being the most valuable thing was just time on the instrument. I was real fortunate from the age of 13. I've never not had a band. You know, I got with some older kids when I was 13, so I was always gigging and I was always rehearsing and always playing. And so my first gig, I had an acoustic 150 solid state head and two 412 cabs and a fuzz face. You know, it's like, because that's what I had, you know, and I, you know, looking back, I have no idea what that sounded like other than probably pretty fuzzy and who knows what. But it was just about the music, you know. It was all centered around, you know, just wanting to play the tunes. And of course you're playing all covers back then, so just wanting to sound like Kiss or Rush or Nugent or Foghat or whatever it is that we were playing, you know. And so it kind of wasn't until years later that I really started being a bit more geeky about it, you know. Even on my early records, it's, you know, pretty embarrassing that some of the tracks are actually, like if you listen to the original Cry For You or Carpe Diem, that's the little Zoom box, this little, you know, the next generation rock man that came out in the early 90s, you know. And I was just in the studio thinking I was recording a demo, you know, for what would be my first solo record, you know, post Danger Danger or whatever. But the performance was such that, you know, I couldn't beat the demo kind of thing. And so I ended up kind of going with it. And, you know, there was other tracks that had proper amps, either a VHT or, I don't think I was using Laney by then, but there was just a variety, like an ADA preamp like a lot of people had, or the 5150. I had one of the early ones of those because I was a PV endorser back in the Danger days. So, but it wasn't really, I got to be honest and say, it wasn't really till I got into like the Resolution era where, you know, when I started working with Mike Dane in the studio and we decided to really tone quest, you know, start getting into the nuts and bolts and taking weeks to find a tone if that's what it took, you know. But along the way, what's happening is, I mean, we all have our heroes. We've all got, you know, in my mind, I've got, you know, Lukather's a big guy for me at a certain level, you know. And there's Metheny, and of course, once EJ comes along and he's bringing Hendrix and Vintage Cream with him, and Wes, and so and Stevie Ray, of course. There's so many to mention that I think in our mind, we're in our inner ear, we're gaining this idea what great tone is, you know. And or in the countryside, you know, you're listening to Ray Flack and Brent Mason and all the greats, you know, in that genre, and that certainly drives, I think, what we're going for, you know. So it's got to start. You're right. You mentioned that it's coming from the ear, because that's exactly right. And I think so much of what I do, I'm certainly trying to reach the bar of my heroes, and I don't think you ever really get there because you're not them, right? But it ends up, you know, this porridge of this stew of your favorite tones kind of comes out at some point sounding like you know. There's the physiology certainly of even just the size of your fingers, and some people even think the pH of your sweat, you know, has stuff to do with it. You can get crazy like that. But it's really the ears. It's like, what is it that you're going for? Because it's handy to have that idea, that kind of notion and that sound, to without all the stuff plugged in, you've already kind of got an idea to get to your fingers onto the strings. But that can take years, you know, sometimes. Or then you get a guy like Eddie Van Halen that was pretty well formed by his early 20s, you know. So it happens differently for everybody, but it really does seem to be primarily time on the instrument, you know. And then eventually, if you've got the, you know, the ability, the time, and really the will to do it, you know, there was. Sorry if I'm babbling too much, but you did say, why don't you just...
No, I mean, like, already I'm just taking mental notes. I'm like, ooh, I want to ask about this. Oh, I want to grab that.
Okay, well,
just great points, man.
Well, to say one more thing real quick is that, you know, once I start to get to know Eric Johnson a little bit, and I was always kind of going to see him at his shows, we might talk afterwards, and there was kind of one point, and this is around the time of Resolution starting to take fruition. But I was like, I kept telling Eric, man, you need to write the book, Eric, because he's done all the work, you know, and he's done so much to really pursue every little element, and that's kind of the benchmark that was there for me and Mike Dane when we were recording Resolution. Like, you know, man, you know, you hear all these stories and myths about Eric's journey, but once you start going down the path and trying these things out, I know you've done the same thing, man. Or yeah, that cable and that battery and that where the pedal's sitting, is it on the ground or off the ground? This all matters, you know. And but it also became clear to me that you know, Eric could write the book, but you kind of got to do it yourself. You kind of have to go through that, because what works for him may not be, you know, primarily what works for you, and that's certainly the case. So it's always down to it, man. There's some shortcuts, you know. Yeah, the pedal helps and the gear helps, the guitar helps. But man, the time, you just got to have the energy and the will to do it, you know.
Man, let's talk about you, Jake, because you and I both have that affinity. And when I was in my early 20s, I was obsessed, man. It got to the point where I was so obsessed I was losing my own identity as a player, because I was trying to play everything I could. There was, you know, WWEJD. You know? it was like that's how my life was
awesome.
going, you know?
It's a pitfall. You have to be careful.
It is. You know? And luckily, I became self-aware because, and it wasn't because I just woke up one day. It was because every gig I was going to, people were coming up to me and be like, man, you're EJ. Dude, you're EJ. Like, and it wasn't the tone. I mean, like, I was using whatever I had at the time because,
sure.
You know, I didn't have the, you know, the rig or whatever, but I was studying, like you said, when you're looking at tone, man, it's not as simple as going over buying that Diesel or that Lone Star and plugging in and boom, there she is. It's like, what do you sound like, and your intensity and your velocity and the angle of the pick changes the high end. There's so much internally, and I think I'm lucky because I grew up without a lot of money. My first was a PV Bandit.
I'm the same way, man.
I had to do what I could with my hands to kind of get it. And so that led me to another point you just said, which was talking about Eddie Van Halen. And when we think about the tone that we all hear and in our minds, and everybody has, there's manufacturers, you know, as well as I do, that have built a career on a tone that man, I love to say it like this. When you really think about it, you know, an immigrant kid with a piece of junk guitar that was cobbled together by the age of 23 redefined history. It's like a musical history. It's like
that's true.
He knew what he was looking for. And so one more thing that you said that I want to ask you about was Resolution. That was a pinnacle moment for you, and it was my gateway drug to your music.
Oh, man.
I remember being on Petrucci Forum with all of our buddies, with Martin and all those guys.
Yeah.
And that was about the time that record came out. And at that time, there was a lot of like hot dogging playing in the landscape.
Well, and it had been for a long time.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It, like, reignited it when he came out, and those Tone Merchants videos were out. So like,
which one was this? I'm sorry.
When Guthrie Govan.
Guthrie, good Lord, yeah.
When his Erotic Cakes thing came out,
another landmark record,
Yeah, it was like, man, now everything was rolling around that was like super hot dogging. And the thing about Resolution that was so beautiful in the tone, and this is going into the deep dive of it, like, yes, man, there's the gear, there's the recording techniques, there is the pedal on a thing or not. But man, when you deliver the lines and the phrasings and the bends and the time, and this is one thing I've really obsessed over lately, is the time feel within the bend.
Yeah.
How long is the arc? What does it do? It's,
sure.
You know, I love Derek Trucks, so I've been.
Oh my God, yeah.
I've been studying how to try to implement some of that.
No, I've heard you do it, and it sounds great. Yeah, you're killing it, man.
But it's like that is the tone journey and how you get there. And I think it's important for folks to remember that when you are chasing the sound in your head and you're trying different amplifiers and stuff, you really play to the gear, and it's like it's a cohesive, symbiotic thing that happens between the right guitar and the right amplifier and the right player when they get on it. And you know, I grew up playing acoustic music, so a lot of that, there was one, it's working out, there's no amplifier, you know, it's like you play a Martin, it's just like kind of there it is.
That's all you got.
So at what point did you kind of lean into being, I know your single coils are quasi humbuckers, like at what point did you kind of lean away from playing a traditional humbucker? And I know you've got some really beautiful vintage Strats that were single coils. Where did you find your journey, specifically looking at pickups? Because you're one of, like, honestly, Andy, like, it's like Danny Gatton and you are the guys that I think of, and I think most people think of when they think of that style of pickup.
Right. Yeah. He had the old Bardens, right?
Yeah. So, like, what was it that led you there? How did you get there?
I wish I had this magical journey answer, but it was literally when. This is the prototype for my original AT100 guitar. So this was built in 1994. And there was a guy at Ibanez I was working with named Bill Comiskey. And as we were discussing the guitar, and I had kind of a part strat, because I'd been working with Ibanez since '91, and we'd gone down this path of like, well, we want to build you your ultimate guitar. And kind of like you, I was just, till that point in my life, I was kind of lucky to have whatever I had. So I didn't know what that was, Well, I had a Squier Strat and a Les Paul I'd grown up playing, and I don't know. But Kramer, who I'd worked with for a bit before that, had built me a part Strat because of EJ. I wanted something that looked like his old 54. And so we started working on a guitar like that would be more vintagey, but with some modern appointments. And Bill had suggested trying these cruisers because they were kind of single coil voice, but DiMarzio built it as a humbucker, right? And I always thought that, well, if I had a regular single coil in my humbucker, it's kind of hard to match going back and forth. So originally I had a Seymour Duncan Jeff Beck in here, and now has the DiMarzio AT1, which I really highly prefer. But it just kind of by happy accident, and they wired it so this was actually a bridge instead of a neck pickup. It's now an actual neck pickup. But it was just something that, like, okay, that's how I got the guitar. I connected with it, and then I just kind of built everything around it.
So when you got the guitar, it just immediately felt good. You were like,
I knew it was it, and it was clear, and people around me recognized it too. There was a friend of mine named Pierre de Beaupart, who's Keith Richards' lifetime tech at this point. I'd just gotten the guitar and I played the Dallas Guitar Show. He goes, "Man, that Strat really sounds great." I was like, "Oh man, all right, cool." You know how it is when somebody that's a buddy of yours that is a tone freak gives you a compliment. Just go, "Okay, I'll stick to that."
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that. But I was recognizing that I was getting really what I wanted. I had the modern humbucker because playing a straight Strat for me would have been difficult, playing the kind of music a little bit more hot rodded that I grew up playing. But I love to have something that can kind of straddle all that. So it was just literally, it wasn't that I was shunning the sound of a single coil, because I absolutely love it. Like you say, I've got a couple old Strats that I still use and are just irreplaceable. What the right vintage pickup and guitar can sound like. Not all of them sound like that, but if you're lucky enough to get one in your hands, don't let it go, kind of thing. But it just kind of happy accident. It was in the guitar. I loved it. And then kind of started recognizing, well, it's just kind of part of my sound now, So when you think of Electric Gypsy and some of those earlier Hendrixy tunes, but then everything on Resolution, certainly anything that would have been neck pickup was that guitar,
Yeah, it's interesting too, because one of the things that I stole from you and stole from EJ, the parallel is like, you don't get all of your gas from one spot. We were talking about Eddie Van Halen. He kind of gets all his gas from one spot.
Right.
And both you and EJ are like a little bit here, pushing a little bit here, pushing a little bit here, pushing a little bit here.
Right.
And it ends up with a very, very vocal quality.
Right on.
And I was wondering, man, when you were doing that thing, was there ever a point that you were like, man, I'm just gonna hit the gas on the amp and just floor it? Or like, was Resolution that record that got you more into the boosting of the sounds? Like, where did that kind of technique come from in your playing? Did you always use a pedal on an amp?
I was always more of an amp guy. I wasn't a pedal guy until a lot later. Certainly Resolution was kind of a transitional thing because the Lone Star had kind of come out right at the end of recording that record. So the Lone Star is barely on it. It's mainly the what are normally my two Marshalls here. It was two Marshalls and a 3-knob tube driver into Echoplexes, essentially. But also along the way, I gravitated towards the Lone Star because I love the gain channel not being it was not fuzzy. It was kind of almost too fat, right? So I would end up using a tube screamer in front of that lead channel. But it wasn't until I had an amp malfunction at a clinic at Anderton's Music in, I think it was somewhere in Swindon or outside of London. And the effects loop 12AX7 had gone bad, so I couldn't use the effects loop. So I couldn't use the amp distortion, because if I put my delay before the amp, what that's going to sound like. But I had an Angry Charlie JHS on my board. Just somebody recommended it at my local music store. Check this pedal out. I dug it. So, but then I started recognizing, well, I had a bit more control. I had a bit more dynamic control in that situation with that amp, that pedal. So that started driving even further my love of just a really great, loud, clean amp and a gain and a variety of gain pedals. I haven't even counted, but I've got at least 5 different gain pedals on my board right now. Each, several of them are kind of going for the same thing, but I have in different levels of stair step up, just a little more hair or whatever on it. Then of course my signature AT, which was initially based on the Angry Charlie. That's been my main lead tone, but I still use the amp distortion too for a different thing, and I'll blend some of those gain pedals. But I think over time, when we have so many different sounds in our head, man, it's there's a lot you can get from your guitar in a volume knob, but there's these different styles and voicings of kinds of gain that I love having that at my disposal, so I can even increase the palette of what I might be going for a certain passage in a tune, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So let's talk on the speaker side of things real quick. One of the things that I find unique to you is that you're not a 412 guy most of the time. Like every time I've worked with you, you want a 212. And it was funny, I actually years and years ago, maybe about the time we first met at that RMA clinic, there was a buddy of mine in a rock band called 10 Years, and he had the Boogie 212 cabinet.
Yeah.
He's like, man, we're coming off the road. We're switching cabinets. Would you want this? And I was like, yeah, man, how much is it? He's like, give me $200 for it. I was like,
that's a good deal.
Yeah. So I was like, I'd rarely seen guys play those cabinets. I mean, I didn't get with it myself very often, even though I loved it. And and since then, I noticed that is a big staple of your sound. Now, is there a specific speaker? Is it how that low end obviously is a lot tighter, right? Because Boogie 412 can be like.
That's exactly why. I need as much definition as I can. And that being said, there's vintage 30s in it, and I think it's just what I'm used to. I could probably do some more experimenting. I think I might like a higher wattage speaker in some instances. I've really got a cool. Last year I got a George Benson signature Fender amp that's got a 100-watt speaker in it and a really low output 12AX7 in position 1. So just really tough to break up, but it's just beautiful, clean, and the articulation is great. So for if I'm trying to get a clean jazz tone, that's my guy. But the 212, this further was cemented in the Resolution recording because we had the Recto 412 that I've had forever. In fact, it's right here. And we had a couple of 212s. I just was more and more gravitating towards the sound of the 212, but it was because of that. Sometimes there can be a little bit too much of that woof and that low end. Great for certain things, but I don't know. I like the immediacy and the tighter low end for the articulation.
And it's nice in a mix too. Like one of the things that I've learned as I've grown a little long in the tooth, I guess, is like when you're playing alone, you dial in a tone that sounds good when you're by yourself. And then when you get with the band, you're like, why do I not hear me? What's going on? And that's one of those things that, again, when you use the words, you have to find it for yourself. That's the path that I think a lot of guys realize when they get older is like, man, I'm not cutting through the mix when I hear these recordings, or even now in a cell phone era. Like cutting through the mix because of the low end or whatever. Or when you're making a record, you're having to go in there and artificially EQ post-production versus trying to get something tighter and more focused like right out of the gate, right?
That's it, yeah. And that's what we did on Resolution. There's no EQ on the guitars. Everything.
What mic preamps did you use? Did you use?
We had a couple of Neve 1272s.
1272s, yeah.
I had a couple, and Mike had a couple, and we decided his sounded better. Yeah. But it was all about mic placement and just getting it from the amp and the whatever. Like let's say I had a pedal or two, So it was mic placement, That was kind of Mike's ethos. He wanted it to be as natural and old school as possible, even though we were recording digitally. Let's not have the less stuff in the way, even in post. Of course, with drums and stuff, I'm sure there was some EQ and stuff being applied, but we tried to keep the guitars exactly how it was coming out. So that was cool.
And mic placement's such a hot topic in today's landscape. Guitarists in the internet worlds because you have access to IRs and the audio aux where you can like kind of create your own
right.
And gosh, I know that 19-year-old me didn't have access to hear these vintage ribbon mics and know what they
no way.
Like.
Yeah, of course.
But like now in today's world, if you save your dough for a summer of mowing lawns or washing cars or whatever, you can get you an aux and have at least a reference point of where what microphones sound like what, you know?
Sure.
So is there any of those load boxes that you like that you've messed with? I mean, maybe not to record a record or maybe play live or whatever, because, you know, when I go out, I don't have a production similar to what Rascal Flatts takes.
Right, sure,
yeah. Consistency's an issue, and I've really enjoyed this little Sir reactive load IR because no matter which front of house guy it goes to and which city, I at least know that I'm giving him the same thing every time.
That's cool.
You move a 57 that far,
right?
You talk about mic placement. You can spend days moving a 57 and angling it. You really can. And
of course,
And that's not something that I think is mythos or legend. I think people don't realize.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying about the recording of some of the records. Yeah, we took the time to do that. And no, I like the Sir IR. I have got 2 of them.
Oh, cool.
So when I'm upstairs in my studio now. So I have in a separate room. I've got my 212 rectos mic'd up with 57s. But when I'm in my office, I finally realized I had this little Korg that I practiced with for years. So I should have my tone down here too. So I'll have a couple of pedals and a couple of heads down there, and I'll run it through the Sir IR box. And just whatever patch comes up number 1, I dug it, and it sounds good.
I think those patches Pete made, I think some of those are like Pete's greenback cabinets.
Well, whatever number 1 is sounds great.
That's pretty good, right?
It sounds real good. I know Mesa makes one that sounds real good too, and I've used the aux a couple of times. I don't own one, but I know when I did the hang with Martin Miller at his studio, we couldn't. He had a Lone Star for me, but I couldn't use the cab because of the room or whatever. So we used that. It sounded good, man. You know.
Yeah, those tones on the Martin recordings are fabulous. I was actually wondering if you were using the load box, because you can see it in the background, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, I didn't spend any time. I mean, it was one of those things where, okay, come in, let's go. We're recording however many songs today, you know. But yeah, it sounded good, man. I mean, I'm still at the point where the technology's come a long way, but you know, I've got the room full of stuff. I want to use it, but that's cool to hear that you're using it live, because I've thought about starting to implement that for that exact reason, where, okay, at least I know it's going to be a consistent thing that I can send it to the front.
And that is the thing. And it takes one. I noticed, like I said, it's like if you're touring with a major league artist, you got the Katy Perry gig or whatever, you've got a lot of control every night. You got the same guys, you get the same control.
Sure,
I guess I'm kind of talking more to the people watching this video, but it's like, if you're playing a venue like what I play, a couple 100 seaters or whatever, it's like, man, if my guitar cable gets wrapped around the mic stand and it pulls it this much, now my
it's gonna happen,
Hey, and it's gonna happen. You're gonna break those strings, and those tubes are gonna go out, and that's gonna be a thing.
It is gonna be a thing, right?
And I realized how much of a safety net that can be by just being like, all right, front of house man, what's your name, George? Great, here's your line.
Here's your cable, right? Exactly.
And you still can hear your cabinets on.
You've got the sound, Your
sound's the same. So
do you put much in the monitor?
I actually don't. I don't like a lot in the monitor if I can help it. And the only reason is it's the same thing. If I toured and carried the same GDL or QSC or whatever, maybe I could dial my rig in and have that consistency. I know Joe's got a lot of guitar in his monitors and stuff, but he's touring with the same exact wedges.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I usually hate it because it's full range. I know Petrucci, I think, has a 12-inch like guitar cab that points out.
It's like an actual guitar speaker.
Exactly.
Like what doesn't Vi do something like that too?
He might. I don't remember. I will say that, this is not to name drop, but the very first time I got to sit in at one of Eric's gigs was at the Granada in Dallas, and it was one of those things where what's that?
That's a great venue. I've played that venue.
No, there you go, man. That's when I'm in Dallas. That's where I usually play now. But now I've got the Guitar Sanctuary here in McKinney. I'm real spoiled because they got that really cool. You got to play there, dude.
I have played there. I got to do something there.
What's that?
I said I have played there. I need to do. Hey, let's me and you do a show there one time.
We could absolutely do a show. It would be dose. We need Trace Andres, but maybe we could get somebody else to come in and have an actual Trace Andres.
That would be super fun.
So who would we get? We got Andy Summers, Andy Wood, Andy Fairweather Lowe. Who else could we ask?
Andy James. There's another Andy.
There you go.
Yeah, we need to think about that. It'd be fun to do one.
If your name's Andy, you want a gig with me and Andy Wood.
Yeah, just
send your tape in, but your real name has to be Andy. Right?
Yeah,
Trace Andres.
Yeah. So you were saying about playing.
No, so I did this. So Eric was going to play. He was playing a couple nights at the Granada, and he invited me to come the second night to sit in. And just bring your amp down. And then it turns out he was having issues at sound check. One of his speakers had blown in one of his twins. And so we didn't get to rehearse. We didn't get to sound check. So it was literally, I don't know if he did, without exaggeration, about 6 or 7 encores that night. It was just an incredible gig. But they literally brought my amp out right for the song I was going to play. We were going to do a Spanish Castle Magic and a 12/8 tune off the Alien Love Child record. And it's this Lone Star, and I don't even, maybe I had a tube screamer, and they put a mic on it, and it's coming through the monitor, and it's the greatest guitar sound I've ever had personally.
No
like,
way.
Of course, it's because I'm coming through Eric Johnson's monitor, I guess, but I don't know what the deal was. It was like this big old JBL wedge, but it sounded killer. It was like, damn, why can't I have that?
I've had those experiences where you have a great monitor, and it's just like, I've had the other experiences where it's like the low goes to super subhuman frequencies and the highs go to 20K, and you're just like, my guitar doesn't live anywhere on either side of that.
It's painful, yeah.
And again, let's circle back to what you said at the beginning of the hang, which was, it's about the playing, and you're separated from us. Maybe there's a sonic distraction. Right. And dude, that can really cripple me personally. And so I can't focus on phrasing. I can't focus on anything except why did somebody put Hornets in a JFG coffee can and put it on stage? And like, what's happening?
That's
here?
my tone, right? That's what I'm going for, man. That's what.
You walk back to the amps, walk back to the cab, and you're like, okay, it sounds great here. I'm not crazy. You walk back to the monitor, and you're like, what is going on? Oh, speaking of, anybody watching this, if you're using any kind of modelers or things like that, little tip that I've discovered is going into the Pair EQ and shaving it before you even taking it to your DAW. Like, start rolling it off around, 6, because the fractals and the Kempers and all these modelers, they can provide so much frequency that the actual guitar rig that is being modeled doesn't even have.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
So that's like, if anybody's watching this and is ever having trouble with high end on a modeler, that's something I've discovered, and I stole that from Rick Beato. So.
Oh, very nice. Rick is a source, a fountain and source of information. Hey, but one of the most important things that my trio does, especially going into a room that we haven't played, or maybe it's not our usual sound guy, we make sure the PA doesn't go on until we've played for a while.
Because really?
We want never do I want to walk in and have my shit on in the PA. Because it's already not my sound, right? Already. So I said, let us play for a while. Let us get our balance on stage. Because my Mike will never use a monitor. He hates it. And I try not to use it if I don't have to. So we just try to get a balance with ourselves. And it makes a huge difference. And okay, now sound man, bring up what you need. Because chances are, like you say, if we're playing 200 and 300 seater places, they're not going to need much of me. It's just... And if I start hearing the high end of it coming through the full range, like, oh man, let us get our balance, and that way I know no matter what happens after that I'm gonna feel okay about it and have a good sound.
Man, I can't thank you enough here for taking the afternoon to just kind of talk tone with me, and I hope the folks watching this are taking in the wisdom from Obi-Wan Kenobi here. And
shoot, man.
Tone,
man.
Let
me say this as a commercial for the Woodshed, because this is the key to what happens at these camps, right? It's not just Andy and I. You've got these other world-class players, but it's everybody that attends. Everybody, because there's all levels of experience. There's some beginners. There's some guys better than certainly me coming in to hang. But that energy that happens when you get like-minded people, and here you're just witnessing Andy and I just kind of hanging, but it's, you get multiplied versions of that kind of guy and girl, and it's magic, and it reminds me of when I was actually in school, in music school, in my early college days, because there was this great faculty, that being Andy and I and Robin and Mark and Brent, who am I leaving out? Greg,
and we just announced Laurie. I don't know.
And Laurie coming, so I love her too. She's an amazing person and player. But so you've got that, but then it's at the energy of everybody else there. You're going to learn as much from your buddy that you meet, at the camp, as you will from the instructors, because everybody's got this this shared passion for guitar and for music, and it's such a great energy, and you take it home with you, and it lasts for months. It can last a lifetime, actually.
It really can.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So every time I have done these camps with some of my favorite players, it's like, man, I'd have paid to be here anyway, because I go home buzzed like everybody else, because it's like, man, checking you out. I mean, last year standing in front of Brent Mason's twin when he was playing, it's just one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life.
It really is, man.
And you turn up, standing next to Joe Bonamassa with that, that Dumble and the 58 twin and a Les Paul. Yeah. Glorious. I mean, these are experiences that are just incredible, man.
And we always have such a great house band. So shout out to the house band.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Jim Riley and Travis Toy and Nitty played last year and stuff. It's going to be really special. And thanks to AMS, man. I'm gonna go ahead and plug them, because if you guys are watching this and you maybe want to come to Woodshed but can't afford it, they're giving away passes. If you want an Andy Timmons guitar and you can't afford one, they're giving away an Andy Timmons guitar. We're giving away, AMS is giving away a Brent Mason hot wired pedal. They're giving away my new pedal, the Gearbox. They're giving away some of Greg Koch's Gristle. Is it the Gristle Master set?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and
it's going to be gristly.
It's going to be gristly, and they give away Mark's Melody pedals. So please, man, please jump in the link and jump over to AMS, sniff around in their shops and find.
They're good folks.
Nice.
Have you done a clinic up there?
I haven't done one. They're going to come and hang out with us at Woodshed, but I'm sure it's inevitable to get up there and hang out.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're good folks.
Those guys are great. And, man, I'm so looking forward to seeing you and jamming with you.
Likewise, dude. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Man, thank you so much for being here, and cheers to everyone out there.
Thanks for hanging out with me this week in the Woodshed. If you're interested in bookings, live shows, or buying TrueFire Jam Play courses, may I invite you to go over to andywoodmusic.com. If you're interested in channel support, and the only way that I can keep doing this is because of you guys, make sure to hit subscribe. Go over to patreon.com. There you can get access to a private Discord with lots of other players who are always sharing gear and licks and chops and videos and picks and all that stuff. You can also gain access to my weekly live Zoom masterclass. You gain access to tabs, backing tracks, over 200 lesson videos, all kinds of good stuff. So hit up patreon.com/AndyWoodMusic. Thanks for being in the Woodshed with us this week. We'll see you real soon.